Hello, everybody. David Wiedemann from davidwiedemann.com. This is 5 Minutes of Thought, episode number 31, Attending to the Invisible. Thank you for joining me. What's the big idea today? It's this. There are systems, like this universal systems model. Systems have parts. Some of the parts of systems get all of the attention. That's not really fair, so we want to redistribute the attention to all the parts of the systems. We're going to do that in 4 steps. We're going to talk about the visible, the invisible, we're going to ask so what, and then we're going to reflect in a cyclical pattern, and hopefully wondrous things will ensue. Let's start with the visible pieces. Here we have the universal systems model again. This is a model that works for tons of different kinds of systems, helps you think about just about anything from teaching to communicating, to getting work done, to nature. In this model, things come in as inputs, they're processed, transformed, changed, and then given out as an output. There's a feedback loop, hopefully, that returns information to the input stage, and that's what makes it a system. Our attention to the 4 parts of this system is not equal. Most of our attention goes to the output stage. After that, some of our attention is left over for the input stage. And then the 2 stages that get shortchanged are process and feedback, which don't really get thought about that much at all. You could say they are invisible. In fact, I think for most people, the universal systems model often just looks like this, the universal line model. Our attention doesn't go to all the steps of the system, but just to the 2 visible steps. Not to visible and invisible, just visible. To better demonstrate the inequality of our attention to the parts of systems, I have created this thing that I call Wiedemann's hierarchy of system attention. It's a pyramid, and the size of the width of the piece of the pyramid is supposed to represent the amount of attention that we give to a given part of a system, and of course at the bottom we have output. That's where most of our attention goes, in my opinion, seconded by input. Then we finally, as we get towards the top of the pyramid, start to talk about the invisible parts, process, feedback, and what? Question mark at the top. What's that? Well, that represents a part of the system that isn't even shown in the systems model that I think is the most important of all and gets the least attention of all, and that is what I call mind. What am I talking about with mind? Well, take your system. As great as it is, it's even better if it has somebody who's paying attention to it, thinking about it, wondering about it, improving it, changing things, repairing things. That's what I call the mind. The mind makes a kind of commitment to the system to take care of it. That commitment over time becomes a kind of a container in which the system can be maintained and improved. And without the mind, I don't think you have quite as stable a system. How about a concrete example? Let's take for a system the desire to become a better public speaker. Here you are public speaking. Let's drop that into our universal systems model at the output step. Okay, well, what would be the input step for this? Well, it would be something like this. You preparing your presentation. And I think that is just about as much as anybody generally thinks about when they give a presentation. Well, I got to prepare it and I got to give it. But if we want to think about it as a system, we know that we also need a process step. Well, what would that be? That might be you practicing your talk to somebody, and you need a feedback step. You have to ask the people who talked how it went. And finally, of course, you need the 5th part of the 4-part system, the mind. You make a commitment to getting better as a public speaker. That's what's driving the system. That's what put it there in the first place. That's what's going to make you do the hard work of listening to the feedback and changing your input. Of course, this is a whole lot to think about. So my advice is if you want to focus on something, focus on these 2 parts. Everybody's going to be thinking about input and output. That's natural. That seems to be hardwired. But very few people are thinking about the process step and the feedback step. So if you want to improve a system, take your attention and put it on the invisible parts, process, in this case, practicing and feedback. Listen to feedback from your presentations, and by doing that, you'll have automatically created a kind of a mind container for your improvement. Let's ask, so what? So what about these visible and invisible system parts? What's the so what? Well, it's two so whats. So what number one? Everyone's looking at the visible parts. That doesn't need a whole lot of reinforcing. The trick is to look at the invisible parts, to attend to the invisible, to process the feedback into the mind. That's where the magic happens. That's where you start to understand systems. Let's pause and reflect. Question one, trigger any thoughts or feelings. Capture those, think about those. That may be your own learning cycle beginning. Second question, can you pop up from behind your cubicle and explain what you just heard to the person in the next cubicle? If you can, then we have achieved our aim. This is what we did today. We talked about the visible. We talked about the invisible. We asked so what, and we reflected. Hopefully wondrous things happened. This has been 5 Minutes of Thought, episode number 31, Attending to the Invisible. I am David Wiedemann from davidwiedemann.com, and today I leave you with another provocative image that will be discussed in an upcoming 5 Minutes of Thought, the universal thinking model. Have a great day.